a dolphin dome, baby animals, some of the weirdest exhibits in the world, and so much more. What's going on, everyone? My name is Zach, and for today's video, I will be your tour guide through the Indianapolis Zoo located in the heart of Indiana. Rather than give you a tour of just one section of a zoo, I will be showing you nearly the entire park section by section for anyone that needs a beginner's guide of what you'll see, how much you might spend, what not to miss, and a few other things before you make your visit. The Indianapolis Zoological Society was established in 1964, but later moved in the current site in the White River State Park in 1988, so a lot of what you'll see was an opening day attraction. It's home to about 1,400 individual animals from 230 species, and you are about to meet them. Now, before we get started with the grand tour and eventually my overall thoughts, let's go over a few basics. First of all, where is it located and how do you get there? The park is an easy 7-minute drive from the downtown area, and also very close to a few other attractions, some that are actually within walking distance. Admission varies greatly. Some days it can be $15 minimum all across the board, and at most $34 for adults, $32 for seniors, and $31 for children, and $10 for parking on top of that. Technically, it's not the most expensive zoo I've been to, but if we're talking about the price to how long you'll be here ratio, if that makes any sense, in a way it's the most expensive zoo I've been to. You have 8 hours to get through 8 major attractions in 64 acres. Everyone is different, but I would say you only need about 2 hours to see everything. Personally, I go around maybe 4 to 5 times, but that's because I have to film. Before I started YouTube, I trekked the entire place in just 45 minutes. It also helps that the ground is completely flat and you will only have to walk about 1.5 miles to see everything. Now here's something I haven't talked about before. Make sure you look at the forecast. I know I'm stating the obvious, but sometimes you'll see a prediction and then a week later it's completely different. Unlike the weather people in my town, my Indianapolis bound friend can confirm that they are very accurate here. When they said that it would rain, it rained, and apparently it rains a lot. If bad weather does hit and you're at the zoo, there are over 15 places that you can take shelter. With all of those out of the way, let's get on with the tour. A brand new entrance was just unveiled, and I gotta say, I love it. Just before the main zoo is the White River Gardens and the Hilbert Conservatory. Both are not anything new. However, the old entrance did not encourage you to walk through it. I'll admit, in my 10+ visits, I never bothered to come over here. So I'm really glad that I no longer have the option, because if I did, then I wouldn't have known that there's a photo of Harrison Ford at the Indianapolis Zoo. Once you're actually in the main zoo, you'll officially kick your day off with the brand new and extremely bizarre International Chimpanzee Complex that can take the apes from the far right side of the zoo and bring them to its center through very long overhead tunnels that can be seen from the parking lot. While unique, it's also very minimalist, which is a pretty good way to summarize this zoo. They went with functionality over naturalism, but the main purpose of this exhibit was to show off the apes' cognitive skills, and by doing so, you can take the same memory tests that they do and realize that, hey, maybe you're not as smart as a chimpanzee. At least that's how I felt. I don't know when they are allowed to use the tunnels, but one troop was up there all day and another was on the move and went back inside around 2 p.m. I'm gonna stop right there because this will actually be the next feature tour, so I'm excited to hear your thoughts when the time comes. I like to say there aren't a lot of things better than an aquarium that's in a zoo, and Indianapolis's Oceans has nearly everything you'd want to see in an aquarium, with an added bonus of several extraordinary features. One of the world's largest shark touch tanks, seals and sea lions, penguins that can swim right underneath you. The old polar bear space was converted into a village for long-tailed macaques, apparently the only ones in an AZA zoo. The species is very famous for diving into the water to get their food, but if you wait to see that here, you're gonna wait forever. Despite all that water, I was told that these monkeys don't swim because, well, they have no reason to. Also, some of the country's few walruses have returned after a brief absence while their exhibit was being renovated. And dolphins in the Midwest? It's not unheard of, but you've never seen them like this. The Dolphin Pavilion features several presentations daily, and it's always been way more educational than most dolphin shows. My only issue is more time is focused on a bunch of mini documentaries on the Jumbotron than actual time with the real dolphins. So this is the only time I wouldn't consider consider a dolphin show to be a priority if you're on some kind of time constraint. What should be your #1 priority is the world's first dolphin dome that puts you several feet below the surface within the show pool. That way the cetaceans can move around you from nearly every possible angle. I'm not one to encourage visitors to see a zoo out of order, but if you get here as soon as the zoo opens, you can have the dome to yourself. Now just remember, please keep your voice down. It's kind to the dolphins, and if you're quiet enough, you can actually hear them communicate. If you want to get even closer, sign up for the dolphin meet and greet. For $20 per guest, that's 6 and up, you get reserved seating for the show and are taken behind the scenes for a quick hands-on encounter. Or if you have the pocket change, sign up for the $275 a person in-water dolphin adventure that puts you in the water for a 90-minute encounter. I know it isn't cheap, but it definitely made an everlasting impression on me and is one of the reasons why I can say I had this channel. Moving across the zoo is the forest biome that features 7 kinds of creatures from 4 continents. From the world's largest cats and howling primates from Asia to flying colors from South America and a couple of North American icons. Oh, and the chimpanzees can now also walk over a portion of this trail. I like to say that this is the most underrated part of the zoo. Big cats don't always cooperate, but they were active at 1:30 p.m. And if you go and you initially don't see anything, just remember they do have 2 exhibits and it's easier to find them in the smaller one. The zoo has made quite a few changes over the last decade and a half, but unfortunately the bear exhibit was not one of them. At least the rescue bears make the most of it. They're almost never not active. If you love some ear-piercing, screeching noises, go to the macaques. Some of them, at least I think, are part of a special flyover experience. Another flock of macaques is asked to fly from a behind-the-scenes area over here, all the way over here to the Bicentennial Pavilion, a massive outdoor venue for special events, a concession area, and macaque presentations several times throughout the day. As a zoo that I think perfectly caters to families, I always thought they were just missing one thing: an exhibit where you can walk amongst kangaroos. In 2022, they added the Kangaroo Crossing, replacing the very short-lived Mystery Park sloth encounter. I love how lush the trail is. The chimps can even be visible if they are in their overhead tunnel. The walkabout is also an aviary, and you can pet the marsupials as long as you're on the path, or feed them for either $4 or get the Explorer Pass that covers the price of 5 animal feeding stations for $15 or $19. On 2 visits, we tried to get into the Kangaroo Crossing between 9 to 10:30 a.m., but were turned away from going through several times because we were told the keeper feedings were taking place. So it's best to maybe save this for later in the day. You might have to wait in line for a bit, but if you don't feel like it, there are slots in the outer barrier where you can see and learn about roos just as much as you would if you were in the walkabout. It isn't out of the way, but it's just slightly hidden. If you see plants that look like they can survive in the heat, you have reached the desert biome. And it's not just a desert exhibit, it's one of the country's 3 major desert-themed domes. It isn't as large or full as the other 2, but as soon as you feel that heat and see that rockwork, you just know it's gonna be good. Most of the main habitats don't look like they're man-made exhibits at all, and the animals seem to have just tucked themselves in between the crevices. The rarities have dwindled over the last decade, and that includes no more free-ranging birds, at least I think, and I believe the endangered Grand Cayman and blue iguanas have been moved behind the scenes, but they did recently add a sandcat directly next to the meerkats. And if you're a local, please tell me when it is active. The second half of the building kind of breaks the desert theme with extreme snakes, several giant pythons, a baker's dozen row of smaller reptiles from around the world, and some of the fastest and most venomous snakes on the planet. I was gonna say the International Chimpanzee Complex is the most bizarre exhibit I've ever seen, but then I remembered the International Orangutan Center exists. If you showed a photo of it to a complete stranger and asked them, what is it? They would probably guess 100 other things before guessing that it's some sort of zoo exhibit. Like the chimp complex, the design was minimal, but eye-popping at the same time. It was also designed with the intention of showing off the apes' cognitive skills, so it's more of a lab than a traditional zoo habitat. The orangutans have access to 2 outdoor spaces, 2 indoor bays separate from the building, a 55-foot tall atrium, cognition center, a 470-foot long sky trail that puts the apes nearly 80 feet above the guest path, and for us observers, the skyline takes riders 50 feet in the air for about 8 minutes that encircles this campus. Each car seats up to 4 people. They are ADA accessible, and with the Explorer Pass, you can ride this and the nearby family coaster as many times as you'd like. It's more educational than it is natural looking, but it's also very polarizing, and I'm looking forward to reading your comments on it below. The flights of fancy, the brilliance of birds replaced the animals of the old children's zoo, but it didn't replace the feeling and aesthetics of a children's zoo, especially since the carousel is still at the entrance. Most bird attractions take place, well, in a birdhouse, but you and the birds can't enjoy the fresh air. Flights of Fancy has 3 walk-through aviaries with 3 feeding stations included in the Explorer Pass for flamingos, you don't see that too often, budgies, and lorikeets. You don't need a cup of nectar to get their attention. With permission, you can gently hold out your hand or arm and hope for the best. Just be sure to watch out for, you know. If you are a regular viewer, you know that I love birds, but I don't visit this exhibit for the birds. Oddly enough, I come here for the mammals, where I saw a ground hornbill, I saw a capybara a couple of years later, and literally a month later, Arctic foxes for some reason. But in the third walk-in flight cage that has an assortment of African birds, there's also a couple of rock hyraxes, a tiny relative of the elephant, and even the manatee. Your quickest animal stop of the day will most likely be at the newer Alligators and Crocodiles, the Fight to Survive, an itty-bitty pocket-sized attraction that opened in 2021. It's just 2 exhibits with 2 very large reptiles directly side by side. Not only can you point out the differences between alligators and crocodiles, but it's cool to see how 2 similar animals that are next to each other are also on the opposite ends of the conservation spectrum. One used to be endangered and is doing well for themselves, and the other is, well, not so much. I wasn't a big fan of it when it opened because it looked a little bare and still has that garage look to it, but thanks to the vegetation growth, it's grown on me a little too. Plus, you can't really beat a baby alligator up close encounter. The plains section is considered the crown jewel. Not counting the parking lot, it takes up a majority of the zoo's grounds at nearly 12 acres, and objectively speaking, the exhibits are simply better because they are more immersive and offer the most space. This long loop-de-loop will bring you super close to the African savanna's classics: giraffes, lions, baboons, warthogs, and porcupines living together. The central habitat is a large field that rotates a few species like kudu, zebras, wildebeest, and more. Even if they're not all in the savanna that day, you can still see every animal. Just go to the right side of the bridge viewing and you can see them behind the scenes through the window slots. I love this bouncing bridge that puts you right in the middle of the rhino habitat. As of right now, calf included, the zoo's first live-born rhino in their history. And at this point of my annual visits, I have seen a baby elephant at the zoo more times than I haven't. Their complex was already one of the best in the nation, and they recently expanded it to fill the void of the old painted dog space to make a 3rd yard and a keeper station. You can scrub down one of the elephants for $68 to $75 per person, which, believe me, is incredibly cheap compared to what I paid for Columbus for the same experience. And this is where I usually give my overall thoughts and criticisms from a zoo enthusiast perspective who's been to over 50 zoos and aquariums. But because it's a little on the harsher side and I want to keep this positive, I put my rant in the comments. Instead, I will end this video with my thoughts from a casual visitor's perspective. Even with the pricey price, I still believe the Indianapolis Zoo is the perfect zoo for families. It's easy to drive to, easy to park, and I wouldn't call it a simple zoo, but like I said earlier, it's relatively quick and very easy to walk through, which means you can see everything here and still have a bunch of time to explore the city. This place has been a part of my life for a while, and even though I don't agree with a lot of their decisions lately, it still has a special spot in my heart, and I hope that this beginner's guide helped you out a little and convinced you to make a visit. So with that, please stay tuned for the next video. Let me know your thoughts. If you are a local, please do not hesitate to say anything that I may have missed. And thank you all for watching Zoo Tours.